Am I the a-hole for refusing to let Karen punish my kid over a spilled coffee? Okay, Reddit, buckle up for one of the wildest Karen encounters I've ever had. I still can't believe this happened. So, here's the setup. I, 32M, was grabbing a quick coffee with my 6-year-old son, Liam, at a local cafe. We'd been out all morning, and he was getting a bit tired, so I let him pick a seat by the window while I ordered. He's a good kid, but you know how 6-year-olds are, sometimes. They're just wiggly, excited, and, well, slightly clumsy. As I was paying for our order, I noticed this woman sitting at the table next to Liam, eyeing him up and down with this sour expression. I figured she'd maybe had a rough day, so I just ignored it and took our drinks back to the table. Right as I sat down, Liam reached for his muffin a little too enthusiastically, and, yup, his arm bumped my coffee cup, which spilled over the edge of the table. A few drops, literally, a few drops, splattered onto this woman's designer bag on the floor next to her. Before I could even apologize, she shrieked like I'd just dumped the entire cup on her. "Oh my God! Do you realize how much this bag costs?" she yelled, holding it up like it was a priceless artifact. Every single person in the cafe turned to look. I apologized and offered to wipe it down, but she wasn't having any of it. "That's not going to cut it," she snapped. "This is a genuine leather handbag. Do you know what that means?" Honestly, I didn't, but she definitely looked ready to explain in great detail. Then she turned to Liam and, no joke, started to lecture my 6-year-old. "How careless can you be? Kids like you need to learn consequences." She looked at me and said, "A good parent would make him pay for the cleaning." Now, I'm usually a pretty calm guy, but something about her yelling at my son set me off. "Ma'am, he's 6. It was an accident. I've already apologized. Let's leave it at that." Apparently, this was the wrong thing to say because she doubled down. This is why kids today have no respect. Back in my day, kids learned to pay for their mistakes. She whipped out her phone and, with a smirk, threatened to call the cops if I didn't handle this properly. I was floored. "You want to call the police over a spilled coffee?" "Yes, I do." She shot back. "Your kid ruined my property, and he needs to be held accountable. I'll call them right now unless you start doing your job as a parent." At this point, the barista, who had been watching the whole exchange, came over and asked if there was an issue. Karen immediately started up her whole spiel about how her bag was ruined and how she expected the cafe to handle unruly customers. The barista just raised an eyebrow, glanced at the barely noticeable coffee spots on her bag, and said, "Ma'am, that's hardly ruined. Also, if you're causing a disturbance, I'll have to ask you to leave." Karen's face turned red. "Me? Leave? I'm the victim here." But the barista didn't back down. "Look, everyone here saw what happened, and it was just a minor spill. I'll happily give you a couple of napkins if you need to clean it up, but there's no reason to make a scene." By now, half the cafe was watching, and a few people started chuckling. Karen shot me one last glare, muttered something about irresponsible parenting, and stormed out of the cafe, still clutching her ruined handbag like it was evidence in a criminal case. After she left, the barista handed Liam a free cookie, saying, "You're a really polite kid. Don't let people like her ruin your day." That made him smile, and we went on with our coffee date. So, AITA for not making my son pay for the spilled coffee? Because according to Karen, he's apparently a delinquent in training. The thing is, I do feel awful for her kids. They didn't do anything wrong, and I hate that they're affected by this. But I keep reminding myself that Karen's behavior was beyond unacceptable. She didn't just make things difficult for me, she put my health at risk, and the Facebook posts with my information genuinely terrified me. She went way out of her way to undermine me and jeopardize my safety, and I don't think I had any other option than to involve HR. So, AITA for standing up for myself and Max, even though it meant Karen lost her job? The office Karen who tried to ruin my career until she got what she deserved. Hey Reddit, I have a wild story about a coworker who made my life a living hell at work. Let's call her Karen. This isn't just your average annoying coworker. This is the kind of Karen who tries to ruin careers and make people's lives miserable. Buckle up, because this is a tale of karma that left me feeling both vindicated and satisfied. I started a new job at a mid-sized marketing firm about a year ago. I was super excited to join the team and contribute my creative skills. Everything was going well until I crossed paths with Karen. From the moment I set foot in the office, I sensed her presence. She was the type who made herself known immediately, with a big personality and an even bigger opinion about how everything should be done. She claimed to be the office mom, taking it upon herself to give unsolicited advice and help everyone with their projects. But let's be real, she wasn't helping, she was meddling. At first, I tried to keep my distance and focus on my work. But then she began inserting herself into my projects. I was leading a campaign for a big client, and I was thrilled about it. I spent weeks preparing, conducting research, and designing presentations. Just days before the pitch, Karen barged into my office with a big grin, saying she had some great ideas for my presentation. I politely declined her help, but she didn't take it well. She kept pushing, insisting that I needed her experience to make it better. I stood my ground and finished my project without her input. But then the real trouble began. After I delivered the presentation, which went phenomenally well, Karen acted like a jealous child. Instead of congratulating me, she went to our boss and claimed I had stolen her ideas. She said she had been working on similar concepts and that I was inappropriately competitive. Our boss, trying to keep the peace, called a meeting to discuss the issue. During the meeting, I presented my notes and documents, proving that all my work was original and that I had never received input from Karen. Still, she doubled down, claiming I was threatening her and had made her uncomfortable. This was her go-to tactic, play the victim. After that, she ramped up her campaign against me. She started spreading rumors around the office, telling people I was difficult to work with and that I had a bad attitude. She even went as far as sabotaging my relationships with other co-workers, trying to turn them against me. It was exhausting. I felt like I was in a high school drama instead of a professional workplace. But the worst was yet to come. One day, I was called into a meeting with HR. Apparently, Karen had filed a formal complaint, alleging that I had bullied her and made her feel unsafe in the workplace. I was stunned. I had done nothing but try to do my job, while she was the one harassing me. I explained everything to HR and provided evidence of Karen's behavior, her constant gossiping, her attempts to undermine my work, and her pattern of playing the victim. HR took my side, but the damage had been done. Karen was not only emboldened, but she also started to target other colleagues who she deemed weak. I watched as she picked off one coworker after another, attempting to ruin their reputations, too. Then came the turning point. Our office was preparing for a big annual retreat, and Karen was put in charge of organizing it. Naturally, she tried to make it a reflection of her expertise. I quietly observed her poorly planned itinerary and her questionable choices for speakers. Most of the team was frustrated because the retreat wasn't shaping up well at all. I decided it was time to step in, not to sabotage her but to help the team. I offered to assist with the planning and suggested a few ideas that I knew would resonate with the group. To my surprise, Karen freaked out. She saw me as a threat to her authority and, in classic Karen fashion, tried to take credit for everything. I managed to gain support from my coworkers, and we began working together to create a more engaging and enjoyable retreat. Eventually, we took matters into our own hands and delivered a fantastic experience that left everyone buzzing with excitement. Karen was furious that we had outshined her efforts. But here's where the story gets sweet. After the retreat, the company's leadership reviewed the event's success and the feedback we received. Karen's chaotic planning had been exposed for what it was. The higher-ups called her into the office and delivered the news: she was being demoted and moved to a different department. As they put it, the company needs team players, not office dictators. I couldn't help but feel a wave of satisfaction wash over me. Karen had been a thorn in my side for far too long, and now she was facing the consequences of her own toxic behavior. Am I the a-hole for not making my son forgive my brother after he was uninvited from his wedding? I'm a single dad to my son Leo, who's now 14 years old. For most of his life, my family has been a huge support system. We've always been close, sharing weekly gatherings and holidays. Leo grew up surrounded by love, and his uncle Jack, my brother, was a significant figure in his life. Jack and his wife, Mary, were instrumental in caring for Leo when he was younger, taking him on outings to the zoo and camping trips. They formed a strong bond, and Leo admired Jack immensely, even wanting to follow in his footsteps one day. However, that all changed when Jack and Mary decided to get married. Their wedding plans turned into a source of contention, particularly when my mother-in-law, Karen, took the reins. She organized a destination wedding at a fancy resort that had a strict adults-only policy. When the invitations came out, they were addressed to both Leo and me. I even arranged our accommodations, but the hotel reservation I made mistakenly confirmed only for 2 adults. It didn't seem like a big deal until a month before the wedding, when I learned from my sister-in-law that Leo wouldn't be allowed to attend at all due to his age. When I broke the news to Leo, he was devastated. He had been so excited about his uncle's wedding, especially considering the bond they shared. Watching him cry as he realized he wouldn't be able to attend was heartbreaking. After pleading with Jack and Mary to reconsider, he was met with frustration from my sister-in-law, who called him selfish, asserting that the wedding wasn't about him. The hurt was palpable, and after the wedding, Leo's relationship with his uncle fractured completely. Over the months that followed, Leo ignored every attempt from Jack to reconnect. It pained me to see this rift develop, especially since it stemmed from a situation that could have been handled with more sensitivity. I understood my brother's desire to celebrate his marriage, but the way they dismissed Leo's feelings only deepened the divide. It was evident to me that Jack hadn't fully grasped the consequences of the situation. One particularly painful moment came when Jack and Mary offered Leo a special vacation during spring break, hoping it would heal the rift. Leo refused, even though he had been looking forward to that getaway, opting instead to stay true to his feelings. On his birthday, when I suggested inviting Jack and Mary to the party, Leo was adamant against it. "If they didn't want me there for their special day, then I don't want them at mine," he said, and that hurt my brother deeply. At a recent family gathering, the topic of Leo's future came up. My mother brought up how Jack had once been a big influence on Leo, suggesting he might consider the same university. In that moment, Leo's words stung like a whip. Why would I want to be like him? I could see the hurt in Jack's eyes as he heard those words. It was a culmination of all the unresolved feelings and pain that had festered since the wedding. Afterward, Jack texted me, accusing me of being an asshole for not forcing Leo to forgive him. He even insinuated that I was jealous of their relationship, which struck a nerve. I responded by saying that he needed to take responsibility for the situation, asserting that his choice to let Karen plan the wedding, someone who clearly didn't care for my son, was a significant misstep. He hung up on me, and I was left feeling frustrated and saddened. My mother and other family members are pushing for me to intervene, insisting that I should make Leo forgive Jack to restore harmony. They claim there was no ill intent and that it was a simple mistake. But I see it differently. My son's feelings are valid, and he deserves the space to heal from this experience. I can't force him to forgive someone who hurt him, especially when that person should understand the impact of their actions. So, AITA for not making my son forgive my brother after he was uninvited from his wedding? On one hand, I want to maintain family peace and preserve relationships, but on the other, I believe that it's crucial for Leo to process his feelings in his own time. I want to support him through this and teach him that it's okay to stand up for himself, even if it means making tough choices. Am I in the wrong for taking this stance? Am I the a-hole for calling out a Karen at a restaurant for being rude to a server? So, this happened last week, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. I, 32F, went out to dinner with some friends at a popular local restaurant to celebrate my birthday. We had a reservation, and everything was going smoothly until we were seated and started looking over the menu. Our server, let's call her Emily, was super friendly and attentive, which was great. She introduced herself and took our drink orders. As we were waiting for our drinks, I noticed a table across from us where a woman, who I'm now dubbing Karen, was making a scene. Karen was sitting with her family, but she seemed to be focused solely on Emily, the server. I heard her loudly exclaiming things like, "Is this how you treat customers?" and "I demand to speak to your manager." It was so out of the blue that it caught my attention, and I looked over to see what was happening. Emily, who was clearly trying her best, approached Karen's table with a smile and asked if everything was okay. That's when Karen launched into a tirade about how her food was cold, the service was terrible, and she couldn't believe how rude Emily was. But here's the kicker, I overheard her say something like, "You should be fired. I can't believe you work here." I couldn't believe it. Emily had been nothing but polite and professional, and Karen was just looking for a reason to be mad. I felt this sudden surge of indignation. My friends noticed I was getting riled up, and one of them said, "Let it go, it's not worth it." But I just couldn't sit there and let it happen. I stood up and walked over to Karen's table, trying to remain calm but firm. I said, "Excuse me, but I couldn't help but overhear your conversation. I think it's completely uncalled for to treat someone like that, especially when they're just doing their job. If you have an issue, there are better ways to address it than yelling at the staff." Karen looked at me, shocked. "Who do you think you are?" she snapped. "This is none of your business." I replied, "Actually, it is my business when I see someone being treated poorly. Emily is doing her best, and you're being incredibly rude." At this point, my friends had followed me, standing behind me for support. We were all just trying to make a point, and I could see the other tables starting to take notice too. Karen huffed, "Well, if you think you can defend her, then you can pay for her mistakes." I didn't let that faze me and continued, "This isn't about defending mistakes, it's about treating people with respect. If you have an issue with your food, just talk to the manager in a reasonable manner." Just then, Emily came over, clearly nervous. I could see she was shaken by the whole ordeal. I told her, "You're doing great, and don't let her get to you. Let me know if you need backup." Karen, now completely red-faced, shouted, "Get out of here before I report you for harassment." I couldn't believe how dramatic she was being, but I didn't back down. "You can report me all you want, I'm not going to stand by while you bully someone else." Finally, the manager arrived. He had noticed the commotion and asked what was going on. Before I could even explain, Karen started in again about how I was harassing her. But I calmly told the manager the whole story and emphasized that I was defending Emily's right to be treated with respect. The manager nodded and turned to Karen, saying, "Ma'am, I appreciate your feedback, but I don't condone the way you've treated our staff. If you continue to behave this way, I may have to ask you to leave." At that point, Karen was absolutely livid. She stood up, knocking over her chair in a huff, and stormed out, yelling about how she would never come back. My friends and I couldn't believe it, it felt like we had just witnessed a mini drama unfold. Afterward, Emily thanked us profusely for standing up for her. She was so grateful that we had her back, and it made the rest of our dinner much more enjoyable. The manager even offered us free desserts for our trouble, which was a nice surprise. However, I later received messages from some acquaintances who saw the whole thing go down. They were split, some said I did the right thing by standing up for the server, while others thought I should have just minded my own business. One person even called me an instigator for stirring the pot. I'm now left wondering if I should have just let it go and stayed out of it. But honestly, I felt like I couldn't sit there and watch someone get bullied without saying something. So, AITA for calling out a Karen at a restaurant for being rude to a server? I accidentally joined a secret society and now I'm freaked out. So, here's a story I thought Reddit might appreciate, because I still can't believe it actually happened. Last Friday, my buddy Dave, yes, classic Dave, tells me about this networking event he's going to and insists I tag along. He's always into weird scenes with tech people and startup junkies, so I figured it'd just be a lot of dudes talking about crypto and Web3. Plus, free drinks are free drinks, so why not? I show up at this event, and the whole vibe is weird. It's in this super fancy, old-school hotel. Not like Marriott fancy, but like, was probably haunted fancy. Chandeliers everywhere, this grand piano playing softly in the corner, and all the guests are way overdressed. Like, we're talking tuxedos and ball gowns for some reason. I thought Dave was just pulling my leg and got us into some rich people's charity ball. But he's like, nah, this is the spot, and drags me in. Right away, something feels off. Everyone's giving us these weird looks as we walk in, like they know we don't belong. Some dude in a slick suit with a British accent takes our names, But he doesn't seem to have any guest list to check, which just makes the whole thing feel even stranger. At this point, I'm like, Dave, are you sure we're supposed to be here? And he just shrugs and heads straight to the bar, of course. So we're sipping our drinks, and I notice that everyone keeps making these subtle gestures to each other. Weird handshakes, tapping their rings a certain way, even some eyebrow raise thing. I thought maybe I was just imagining it, but then Dave points it out too and jokes, dude, are we at a cult meeting? Then things get intense. They announce that the main ceremony, their words, not mine, is about to start, and everyone needs to head to the main ballroom. People start shuffling in, and I'm seriously debating leaving, but Dave's having a blast with the whole secret society vibe, so I get dragged along again. Inside the ballroom, everyone's in a circle around this old, massive table. In the center is this huge, ornate bowl filled with something that looked like wine. I really hope it was just wine. People start chanting something in another language I couldn't place. Then, they start walking up to the bowl, one by one, dipping their fingers in, and tapping it to their foreheads. Now, I'm officially freaked out, whispering to Dave that we need to bounce. He's about to agree when this lady, probably in her 50s but dressed like she's a medieval queen, comes up to us. She looks right at me and goes, "You're next." I panicked. I didn't want to offend anyone, especially since we had no idea what was going on or how serious they were, so I stammer out, I don't know if I'm ready. She gives me this weird smile, kind of pitying but also amused, like she was in on a joke I wasn't. Then she leans in and whispers, "Remember, initiation isn't for everyone. But you're already here, aren't you?" At that point, I grab Dave by the arm, and we both mutter some apologies and practically sprint out of there. As soon as we get outside, Dave starts laughing his head off, but I'm just standing there, feeling all my blood rush back to my head. We didn't talk much on the way home, and I think we were both trying to make sense of it. Here's the kicker, though. The next day, I get a plain white envelope slipped under my door. Inside is a card that just says, "Once you're in, you're always in. You'll hear from us soon." I haven't told anyone in real life because, honestly, who would believe me? But here's hoping that if I do hear from them, it's just some prank, right?